In 2002, the Boston Globe published a series of investigative reports that shook the Catholic Church to its core. It exposed decades of sexual abuse by priests, and more painfully, a pattern of cover-ups by church leaders. The headlines went global. Survivors came forward with heart-wrenching stories. Movies like Spotlight later brought it to the big screen, making sure the world would never forget. For many Catholics, this was not just a news story, it was a crisis of faith. People who had trusted their priests, who had grown up believing the church was a place of holiness and truth, suddenly felt betrayed. And in the years since, more scandals, financial corruption, abuse of power have emerged in different parts of the world. So the question hit hard. If the church is supposed to be holy, why does it seem so broken? For some, the answer was simple: walk away. They couldn't reconcile their faith with the failures of its leaders. Church attendance dropped, parishes closed, trust evaporated. But here's the painful tension. The very faith that calls for justice and healing is the same faith the church proclaims. The Catechism teaches that the church is holy because Christ is holy. Yet, clearly, her members, even leaders, can sin, and sin terribly. This is where it gets messy, because if we expect perfection from every bishop or priest, we will be disappointed. History shows us saints and sinners in the same pews, often at the same time. The church is both a divine institution and a deeply human one. But here's the thing: the scandals don't erase the truth of the gospel, they prove why we need it. The failures of human leaders do not undo the promises of Christ. Jesus never said his followers would be flawless. In fact, he warned there would be wolves among the sheep. What he did promise is that the gates of hell will not prevail against his church. Matthew 16, verse 18. Therefore, when scandals erupt, the Catholic response is not silence or blind loyalty. It's truth, justice, and reform. It means standing with survivors, demanding transparency, and holding leaders accountable, because that is what the gospel demands. Think about it. Jesus himself called out religious hypocrisy. He overturned the tables in the temple. He confronted leaders who used religion for personal gain. That same courage is what Catholics are called to live today. Walking away might feel easier in the moment. But if the faithful abandon the church, who will be left to protect the vulnerable, to insist on reforms, to keep the light burning? The church is not them. It's us. And while the sins of her members are real, the sacraments, the teachings, the mission given by Christ, these remain gifts the world still needs. In 2019, Pope Francis said, "The sin of some cannot erase the sanctity of the many who daily give their lives for the gospel." Think of the priests who serve quietly in remote villages, the nuns caring for the sick in war zones, the ordinary laypeople feeding the poor and defending the unborn. They're part of the same church, too. So, how should Catholics respond to scandals? Not with denial, not with despair, but with a fierce love that refuses to let evil have the last word. By telling the truth, demanding justice, supporting survivors, and living the gospel more authentically ourselves. The church is like a family. When a member does wrong, we don't pretend nothing happened. We face it, we work for healing, and we make sure it never happens again. Because if we leave the church when it's broken, we hand it over to the very darkness we want to fight. The scandals are real, the pain is real, but the hope is real too. And that's why, even in the mess, we stay, we speak, and we work for the church Christ intended from the start.